I'm joined by Sean Ramiz
Yeah, yeah,
from
yeah.
North
Yeah,
Star
come
Politics. I
on.
literally went through this before and I've got the worst memory, but from North Star Politics, which is so fucking exciting, like the most amazing collab ever. But I'm so excited to have you. How are you?
I am good. The sun is out, right?
Yeah.
Easter is Easter blessings, it's Easter blessings. And it's literally just such a pleasure to be here. Listen, when we started off North Star, we were saying behind the scenes, like, because I think you guys didn't expect us to know really about Turn Left. But listen, we did our research to understand what does it mean, yeah, to actually have a good political show, and you were part of our research. So it's very full circle for us to be here.
Isn't it?
And I
So much fun.
really appreciate the community you guys have built is something that we definitely want to aspire to.
Oh my God,
Um,
Sean, we aspire to be like you, the hard work, the graft, and your incredible analysis. So
I,
I think it's us that's honored to have you. So yeah,
I
thanks,
appreciate
Sean.
it.
So coming up on tonight's show, we've got the Greens topping the polls as Labour collapses. We're going to look into the Pope's Easter message where he's calling out the wars. And the last one, of course, it wouldn't be Monday, Easter Monday, without talking about Trump, who's threatened Iran again on Truth Social. But you can help us grow by visiting turnleftmedia.co.uk/support to help fund our work, or by becoming a YouTube member for just 99p. On to our first story. So I think it's fitting to say happy Easter. I hope everyone's enjoyed the 4-day weekend, but what a weekend it has been. What's really great is seeing how politicians use it as an opportunity to prove how much they love a holiday they never cared about to begin with. But do you know who does care? The Pope. Pope Leo used his Easter Sunday message to implore global leaders to cease ongoing conflicts and abandon any pursuit of power or conquest. He stated in his Easter message, "Let those who have weapons lay them down. Let those who have the power to unleash wars choose peace, not a peace imposed by force, but through dialogue. We cannot continue to be indifferent," he continued, "and we cannot resign ourselves to evil." Leo did not mention any specific conflicts in the message, but it was unusually brief and direct. The Pope said that the story of Easter, when the Bible says Jesus rose from the dead 3 days after not resisting his execution by crucifixion, shows that Christ was entirely non-violent. He continues and states, "On this day of celebration, let us abandon every desire for conflict, domination, and power, and implore the Lord to grant his peace to a world ravaged by wars." Now, it's an interesting one because the Pope on Tuesday last week seemed to address US President Donald Trump directly for the first time in the past week as he urged restraint and de escalation in the war in Iran. Have we seen de escalation, guys? I'm not sure on that. The Pope told journalists outside his residence in Gandolfo, hopefully, he's looking for an off ramp. Hopefully, he's looking for a way to decrease the amount of violence. Hopefully, indeed, guys. Hopefully. One can only hope. Last week, he said no one could use Jesus to justify war, citing the Bible verse, "He does not listen to the prayers of those who wage war, but rejects them." His comments have stood in pointed contrast to the rhetoric of Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, an evangelical Protestant who, during a prayer service he convened at the Pentagon on Wednesday, calling for violence during the prayer. He said, "Let every round find its mark against the enemies of righteousness and our great nation," Hegseth said in the prayer service. He then continued, saying, "Give them wisdom in every decision, endurance for the trial ahead, unbreakable unity, and overwhelming violence of action against those who deserve no mercy." Goodness me. Prayer for peace, prayer for war. Which one is it? What is going on with it today? Is it working now? Goodness me, guys. It's like they're trying to silence me. I don't know. I don't know what's going on. But I'll start from the top. You don't expect much from Hegseth, but I do find it interesting that it is that government that is always calling against the use of violence committed by certain religions, namely Islam, because that's the only one that fulfills their little agenda. It's almost like violence needs moral cover, that it's not enough to act, it has to be justified, framed, and in some cases sanctified. Now, of course, in true Easter spirit, I do want to look closer to home as well. And the man needs no introduction, just have a watch.
It's Easter. Happy Easter to all of you. Not, of course, that you know it's Easter, because it seems that now cities, towns, all over our country are really, really shy about advertising the fact. So why have we got this holiday? Well, it's very simple. It's all about the resurrection of Jesus Christ. That is the origin of this. And indeed, it is our Judeo-Christian culture that underpins everything in our country. Of course, we can be tolerant of all religions. We always have been. But isn't it about time we started to
AI no
insist
introduction.
that this is who we are? So I wish you all a very good, peaceful family time. And it reminds me of the founding principles of Reform UK: family,
Excellent.
community, country. And it's worth all of us spending some time thinking about that over this break.
Because nothing says true Christian values like making living standards worse for British people, Nigel. When exactly did Nigel discover his Christian bone, the Christian values? Because once upon a time, didn't he say verbatim that the two-child cap was the right thing to do? More hungry children, Nigel. Doesn't feel very Christian of you. I'm not going to analyse that further because we don't think we need to analyse the hypocrisy. So I'm going to go to Sean. Sean, we can go back to the Pope's message, but what are your thoughts on the Pope's message and then his calling out of Trump the week before?
Yes, yes, yes. You know what? First of all, I just think it's a very sort of refreshing religious discourse, right? And we need to be able to recenter, religion, as it were, as a force for justice, mercy, and universalism. And I feel like just particularly on the left, and it's something that I try to do in my own content because I talk about Islam a lot, etc. And it's this idea that right now what we're seeing is a politicization of Christianity. One of my hot takes on North Star Politics, if you go check it out, is that I think the thing that's going to undo the thing that's going to undo the West, right, is actually going to be this kind of tension that we see in Western Christianity, purely because what we're seeing is that it's become a vehicle for this kind of political rhetoric, right? It's a mask for something that's deeply insidious beneath it. I'm seeing all the comments now talking about, look, it's Jesus talking. I know, don't worry, guys. I understand. That's like 90% of the comments I get, right? So if I'm saying something about Christianity, you better listen. But what I really wanted to say, yeah, is this: that I think the left has an aversion to religion, and I get it because obviously for a long time there has been sort of domination under the guise of religion. There has been oppression under kind of religious rhetoric, etc. Right? But right now more than ever, I think we need to lock in and realize, you know what, you don't even need to believe in religion. You don't need to be religious. You just need to understand that religion is still a powerful force in this world, right? People still believe in it. It's still the thing that holds and governs people's worldviews, right? And the right understand this. That's why you see Nigel Farage sort of coverting and sort of coalescing the religious kind of rhetoric on this. And that's why, therefore, it's so empowering to actually see the Pope, right? Probably one of the greatest, or like the greatest kind of religious figure in Christianity in the world right now, actually stand up against this kind of message of domination. And that theological clash is very fundamental, because if people look into Christian history, they can just look into liberation theology. They can look into the Beatitudes, the Sermon on the Mount. You would wonder if someone like Pete Hegseth has even read anything like this, right? And I think what we're trying to basically uncover, what we are uncovering, is that we need to basically win back that conversation over what Christianity is, because there's I think there's a new reformation coming to kind of Western Christianity and what we're seeing right now, and we need to actually win that back and sort of like shake off that aversion that we have to religion in general, because we don't want to sort of muddy the waters with that type of conversation, and actually make sure that these right-wing figures like your Farages, your Hegseths, your Marco Rubios, etc., and even Trump to some extent, don't obviously win those conversations. And yeah, I think the Christianity is going to be a big battleground for it.
You made a really great point, like the politicization of Christianity. My next question is probably centered around, because Christian nationalism, evangelical Christianity, but
Yeah.
it morphing into politics is something that's happened quite significantly in America. What sort of conditions need to be created in order for that sort of belief system to then be so political? Because I think it is a slight worry. What I worry for is that that sort of Christian nationalism will find its way into the UK, and in some ways it already has. You've got the
Mm.
likes of Farage talk about Judeo-Christian or the Judeo-Christian order, Judeo-Christian culture, and then you've got the likes of Rupert Lowe, who is even further right, basically echoing the idea of a Christian culture and wanting to make sure that things are kept safe in terms of like Christianity, etc., etc. But I do think that it's a form of Christian nationalism. So what sort of conditions need to be created in order for Christian nationalism to take a stronghold in the UK?
Yeah, no, I think it. I think you look at two axes, right? There's both material and immaterial things. So the material conditions that we're seeing right now is obviously some sort of immiseration of a lot of people, okay? And that immiseration can obviously contribute to a lot of the anxiety that individuals see in themselves and how they exist within the modern world. And so what religion, the reason why religion is so powerful, right, is because it gives you a story. It gives you an understanding of who you are in the world, your place, and your sort of destiny and where you belong. It gives you that fundamental faith, right, that certainty in the uncertain. And I think that materially, because people are very alienated right now, because people are in very tough conditions, I think it is a refuge and some sort of oasis, a spiritual oasis from those material conditions. And of course, that's the kind of critique that the Marxist critique will come in and say, well, you got to be careful because religion can become the opium of the people, so to speak, and actually pacify kind of active agents. We shouldn't be passive because of religion. We should actually, be active agents in our own sort of history, in our own destiny. So there's that element of it. I think also what people aren't understanding is that I don't think the material solutions might necessarily make this just go away. Like even if people were basically richer, is what I'm saying, will necessarily make it go away. And that's because I believe like what's happening is that because individuals are so atomized as well, so socially we're so atomized, we have no shared story. We're sort of squeezed by neoliberal economics, and we're spiritually hollowed out by a culture, that neoliberal culture, that has made tradition embarrassing and community very optional. And so Christianity comes along, and Christianity is this thing in the horizon in people's minds. It's a sort of nostalgic relic of the past, which can fit that and actually, sort of provide the antidote to the very like malaise of modernity that we're seeing right now. A great philosopher is Charles Taylor. If anyone wants to look at him, he talks about about this a lot, around people needing to be able to see themselves as part of a bigger picture and a bigger story. And I think what the right has done really well, very, very well, is diagnose that and understand that really well. The problem is the solution they're providing is this degenerate form of Christianity. And so they've diagnosed the ills very well, but the thing that they're prescribing is obviously just another tactic and tool for domination, because let's just call it what it is. This kind of westernized form of Christianity, anyways, is just an evolution of some sort of white supremacy that we're seeing. And so I think like on that side of things, that's the kind of trajectory we're going down. And we need to be very careful and understand that just very clearly. So that's why this is sort of like an appeal for people just to be like, you know what, you don't have to be religious. We just need to understand the function that religion is playing right now, particularly Christianity is playing right now.
Yeah, agreed. I don't think I can add into that, but you're absolutely right in saying that the way that Christianity functions at the moment in the quote unquote West is a tool for white supremacy, but historically has also been that too when we look,
Yeah.
at that domination
Yeah.
in certain continents.
And that's why I think it's so important for voices like the Pope to come forward, and actual authoritative voices to say, actually, no, this is not what it is. Palestinian Christian voices to come forward as well, to be recentered. And actually, the interesting thing, whether we like them or not, right? Candace Owens, Tucker Carlson. I mean, like, I'm not like the biggest fans of them, but they sort of are basically spearheading that kind of internal, I guess, civil war in Christianity in the West, which is like, motivating that split from the kind of pro-Israeli lobby. So it's very interesting. I think a lot of the tensions we're seeing is very, very theological in a weird way, and I think we just got to make sure that doesn't remain a blind spot.
What an excellent analysis. Sean, we'll leave it there, but that was an excellent analysis. I think people might be right. Your name probably starts with J. But let's look at the second story, which I think is the one that people are most interested in, maybe. But the Greens topping the polls. So for the first time in modern British politics, the Greens are polling in first place. And I don't know about you, but it's exciting because it suggests that after years of being told that meaningful change is unrealistic, there seems to be some appetite for some legitimate change. In this graphic, you've got the Greens on just over 21%, Reform right behind them, the Conservatives still hovering around the 20% mark despite everything, and Labour in classic Labour fashion proving just how unpopular they are on 17%. And you've got the Lib Dems at the end, but who even are they? Polanski reacted to this, of course, and said, for the first time in British history that a party to the left of Labour have topped a national poll. Hope it's here. It's all of us. Reject hateful, divisive politics and let's make hope normal again. Not everyone is going to be reacting the same way, as you probably know. You have your haters. If you want to have a laugh, just look at some of the responses you got underneath that on Twitter, and take a shot. Someone attempted to discredit Zach by attacking his looks or mentioning Muslims and not his actual policies. Now, I'm not doing this story because it's showing that because every voter in that 21% mark has suddenly become a committed Green voter. Obviously not. This is, Britain, and we're still a country where people still get emotionally attached to where the potholes are and insist that they don't do politics whilst holding lots of political views at the breakfast table. But what the Greens are benefiting from is something more basic and potentially more powerful. They are increasingly being seen as a vehicle for discontent that is recognisably to Labour's left and, essentially, not stained by direct responsibility for the current mess that we're in Britain. They are the party onto which frustration, hope and that anti-establishment energy can be projected by people who want change. What makes this poll genuinely striking isn't just that the Greens are in first place, it's the configuration of who is around them. Starmer hasn't responded well to this at all. In an article he wrote in The Guardian yesterday, he stated, workers, pensioners and children all better off. Ignore the critics. We really are standing up for working people. He then continued and said, nothing Labour has achieved came easily. Every success was hard fought and hard won against the pool of vested interest, and each time those warnings were proven wrong. Who is he actually chatting to? Who is he trying to convince? Because I think many people who are probably reading that article are going to say, you're wrong, and he's begging it a little bit. Does it not sound like he's panicking though? Standing up for working people, Starmer, you're no better than your opponents. So I do wonder where this man's backbone is and whether he believes the things that he's writing in this article. Because this is the same government that tried to cut disability benefits, then backed off when people kicked up a fuss, slashed winter fuel support, then scrambled to reverse it, floated policies like digital ID, then quietly dropped them, tried to delay local elections, then reversed under pressure, and keeps tweaking its own fiscal rules due to fiscal responsibility just to make the numbers work. He doesn't understand how anxiety works. He triggers that anxiety in people. So I think Starmer's buckling as a result of this poll. I do think it's important to note that Lord Ashcroft isn't the most reputable poll. It's not the most reliable. It doesn't have a great reputation. They're dated D-, and this is of course an outlier. In reality, it's doubtful that the Greens are the number one party, but does this mean that this is insignificant? I don't think so. This demonstrates the direction of travel. Would the Greens be number one on a D- rated poll even 6 months ago? No. So this clearly shows they are reaching new heights, that they're entering into new pockets of Britain, that they are not just a pressure party seeking to move politics to the left, but electorally are just as significant as the other parties. Because you've got the Greens leading in this party. Let's use this poll. People are hyping it up, and I do think we should use it. You've got the Greens leading on just over 21%, and then right behind them you've got Reform and the Conservatives. But I do wonder what this means in terms of which party could potentially be the main vehicle for working class representation, because British politics historically has been structured around a kind of gravitational pull toward two dominant parties, as we know. Even when smaller parties rise, they tend to orbit around that centre of gravity. Those votes consolidate and that pressure builds, and eventually things snap back into a recognisable shape, and that's usually, Labour and Conservatives, with everyone else fighting for scraps at the edges. And then what we've got now feels like Britain is kind of in this uncharted territory, because when voters lose confidence in the main parties that have existed for God knows how long, they don't all calmly agree on the alternative. They scatter, and I feel like that's what's happening at the moment. You can see that unfolding right now, that they're scattering. They interpret the same economic pressure, the same unaffordable rent, the same stagnant wages, the same sense that things aren't working in completely different ways. Some are saying the system needs restructuring, that the system needs investing in, that wealth, housing and public investment need to be fundamentally rethought. And others are saying that their issues they're facing are cultural, and that national identity is slipping, or that services are failing due to migration, believe it or not. And both of those responses are now showing up side by side in the polling. So instead of one party absorbing that discontent, you've got multiple parties feeding off of it simultaneously. But I think I'm talking so bloody much, and I want to bring Sean in. Sean, is it fair to say that polls shouldn't be taken... it's fair to say, that polls shouldn't be taken as scripture, particularly one that's Lord Ashcroft, but I think it's definitely a reasonable snapshot. Does this show signs of hope, or do people need to take this with a pinch of salt? Are the Greens benefiting from genuine alignment, or is it just that there's a political vacancy?
I'm loving all the sort of religious language we're using. It should be taken as scripture or not, and things like that. That's quite funny for Easter. What do I think? Look, polls aren't scripture. You're right. They're more of a snapshot. But on that question of whether or not is this a sort of genuine political alignment or a political vacancy, I'd probably say a bit of both. The reason I'd say that is that, well, first of all, I think it just shows how important it is to have a positive vision or a positive message in politics, right? So you have to stand for something, and your whole campaign can't just be, oh, we're not as bad as those people. Those parties which don't have a positive message right now, particularly the main ones, so your Conservatives, your Labour. The only reason Labour won the last election is because they were just basically saying, guys, we're not the Conservatives, vote for us. It's not a sustainable solution. And therefore, what you're seeing is that the rise, I think, of both Reform and the Greens are heavily intertwined with the fact that they have a positive message, albeit different ones. So I think that when you're looking at the Green surge and the Reform surge, they're symptoms of the same disease, right? It's the failure of neoliberalism, because that is what the aftermath and like the kind of pieces that we're trying to pick up now, to actually provide people with either material security or a sense of who they are. So in many ways, I think that because, like I said sort of earlier, that, we've sort of been spiritually hollowed out by neoliberalism, people don't have a sense of culture, we're increasingly atomized. I think the Greens are very good at targeting that material collapse, cost of living, housing, the broken working contract, the sort of domination by the financial sector. These are all core pillars of their message. Whereas Reform are actually targeting identity collapse, is what I'd kind of put it as, right? This idea of nostalgia, belonging, cultural recognition, and a feeling of something that's been lost. Because interestingly, if anyone takes a good look at the Reform policies, they're not going to do anything materially for real working people. Obviously, as we discussed, I believe that the Reform's version of identity is very degenerate. There's no authentic sort of recognition of people's identities for good sake. I think they're very sinister and insidious behind the scenes. I think they know what they're doing as well. But the wider story of liberalism having sowed the seeds of its own demise, I think, is the interesting one. So the question then of whether or not Green surge or Reform surges, I think, is the sort of appetite for people to be self-aware around, or to understand what is their priority. Is it this story of identity or the story of their own material conditions? And actually, if I were to give a piece of advice to the Green Party, which we actually did when we interviewed Zach Polansky, make sure you check that out, cheeky plug, is that actually he needs to really articulate this sense of like Britishness a bit better, you know? That's what I think anyways, because again, the identity narrative is definitely winning hearts and minds a lot. So those are my various thoughts.
I actually completely agree with that. I say this all the time. I think every time I say this, I think people need to just, put a fiver somewhere, because I've always said that I think the Greens traditionally had to really venture away from looking like the tree hugging party, and I think they've done a decent job of that so far. But I do wonder, maybe you can give me your take on that, and it's whether without Zach Polansky, would the Green Party still be a success? So he's not a standing MP yet, like he's the leader of the Green Party, but I do wonder whether if remove Zach, would the Greens still have the momentum that they do, or is the Green Party literally just Zach Polansky and everyone following Zach Polansky? Do they have momentum outside of him?
No, it's a good question, and I think to some extent it remains to be seen. I don't think it's necessarily a big problem, because actually what we know from, I don't know, like the story of like how religion started, or worldviews, or any kind of secular worldview or political ideology, you always do need a sort of charismatic leader to be able to galvanize a populace and to be able to be at the core of messaging. So I think Zach Polansky is doing great at that job. Now, the question of like, who is there beyond him? Well, obviously you have Mothin Ali, who I think has done a really good job at bringing the Muslim community together, and also like, you know, navigating that tension between his kind of traditional faith, but then also more progressive values. But then also I'm actually very, very impressed, and I think she's very underrated, Rachel Millward. Because I think she's a very effective communicator. She has a strong feminist background, and actually every interview I've seen with her, I'm actually quite confident in her as a representative. So to be honest, I think right now it's very important just to centre Zach anyways as this new sort of face to lead the movement. But I do have a lot of optimism and hope in his deputies as well. So I'm not too scared about the lack of a Zach Polansky in the future, but I do think right now it's very important he is centred at the story of the Green Party.
I think one thing that does worry me slightly is because I do think Britain is in uncharted territory at the moment, that the rise of reform and this, and I think whenever I've spoken to people online who say that they're voting reform, they've said that they're doing it because they really need a change. They want to change their, kind of gagging for that. So the rise of reform alongside them, is that something that people should be concerned about? And how do we start mitigating that rise of reform at the moment, because their popularity is rising steadily?
No, definitely. I think this is why, to be honest, I'm very big on like restoring a sense of national pride as well, right? And actually, I don't think the left should need to hide away from that. I think basically there's a tendency to give up or not really want to touch certain things which have had a history of domination. And look, I'm saying this as like someone who's on his dad's side, will win Rush Generation. I'm racialized as like Asian, so my mum's been called the P word before, etc. Like British identity and national identity, like in my own sort of story and history, is something that has been a tool of domination, right? But actually, like, the question is, theoretically and actually in principle, does it have to be a question of domination? I don't think it has to be. And actually, for us on the left who care about material conditions, who care about universal values, who care about seeing a sense of a sort of understanding like the individual as a sort of complex story of all these different strands of history, I think that we do need to be better at articulating and facing head on a clash of what it means to be quote unquote British, what it means to be part of this country. And that doesn't necessarily mean, for example, it doesn't necessarily mean just giving up on some of the sort of like national pride talking points. For example, I feel like when it was the Olympics, people came together quite well. When it was like the World Cup, people came together quite well. I think even the English tradition of nature and caring, preserving nature is something that we should be proud of. So I think that, like, and I'm even behind the scenes, I spoke to Zach and I was like, I think that is basically the big blind spot that we need to tackle, because the material condition points is good, like we're targeting that well, but the question of like, what does it mean to actually be a member of society? What does it mean to be, you know, like, you know, brothers and sisters in this country that we call Britain? I think there needs to be a starting point. I don't have the answers for it.
Yes,
I know people think
that's
like, I know
how
people,
topics are.
yeah, I know people think I'm Jesus and I think I have all the answers, but I just don't have all the
Yeah,
answers.
you need to go back to the drawing board and come back with an answer, because no, I'm
But
joking,
it's
but
something I'm thinking about a lot. It's something I'm thinking about a lot.
but
Yeah.
you've got me thinking, because I actually completely agree with you. I think on the left we do shy away from having conversations about national pride, or we do have conversations about national pride. I think we do, but obviously not with the same momentum that the right does. The right speaks
No.
about national pride so distinctly that it forms a part of their identity, that their identity on the right, and like their whole character on the right. Whereas on the left, we're still seen, Starmer's still seen as a commie, you know, he's still viewed
Yeah.
as a communist. And I think there is still like this, he's not, by the way, and I don't believe that. I need to really preface that. I know that he's not. But this is what people are saying to the left, that we're just a bunch of snowflake lefties that are obsessed with identity politics. But the irony of it all, us wanting to think about identity, and on the right, they talk about national identity, but they're never accused of being obsessed with identity politics ever. So I don't know. I think we've got a huge amount of work to do on the left, and I think a lot. I talk about this often, but I think on the left we're so disjointed a lot of the time, because the way that sometimes we handle our conversations on the left. Like I think
Yeah.
when we looked at how your party came
Mm.
up and then kind of plummeted in the way that they did, a lot of it was just infighting. And I think more often than not it's a lot of, but you don't know what this means and you don't know what that means. And it does feel like sometimes we just need more cohesion on the left, but I think we've got a long way to go. Who knows?
Yeah, no, but it's even just about the fact that like how can we connect that story to like to make it more explicit, that the fact that people's material conditions are being so immiserated. I mean, that's the real reason why you can't have a sense of community, because you don't have the resources to put back into your community. It's the reason that your high streets don't look like they used to anymore. Yeah, I think it's very important.
Yeah, I agree. I
yeah.
agree. But yeah, so you did make me laugh, because I literally was online this weekend and someone said, well, I walked down the street, it doesn't look like the high street anymore. And they were saying because there were too many black and brown faces. So I think we've got to shift that conversation slightly. But no, great analysis, Sean. Thank you. Before we move on, you know, I am a snowflake lefty, and I'm going to claim it. It's 2026, and we really want this year to be big for Turn Left. We want to be more ambitious than last year, as per, and to really put ourselves on the map. We would like 2026 to be the year where we can have a studio. Funnily enough, I'm heading up to Leeds this Friday, guys, believe it or not, so that I can be in the studio that Curtis has made in his own complex. And for our contributors, we want our contributors to be paid for the work that we do. Since we do this, do Turn Left alongside our full-time jobs. Your support over the years has been amazing. We're ready to take this to the next level. We rely on small donations, so if you want to be part of a media organisation that seeks to destroy the oligarchs, then please head over to turnleftmedia.co.uk/support, and there you can support us monthly on Patreon, where there is another link for a one-time contribution. You can also become a YouTube member for just 99p. On to our third story. Remember when Pope Leo said this? He said, hopefully he's looking for an off-ramp. Hopefully he's looking for a way to decrease the amount of violence about Trump. I literally just covered it in the first story, so there's no way that you guys could have forgotten. Unless you're me, then you'll forget. But on this wonderful Easter Sunday, it seems that Trump has really taken this in his stride, guys. He said this: Tuesday will be Power Plant Day and Bridge Day, all wrapped up in one, in Iran. There'll be nothing like it. Open the effing straight, you crazy bastards, or you'll be living in hell. Just watch. Praise be to Allah, President Donald J. Trump. He's so unhinged. Imagine on Easter Sunday, it's so wild to think that That is what he's doing. I mean, how belligerent does one get? I always think that Trump can't top what he's previously done, and there he is, proving me wrong every single time. But I don't think you can top the things that Trump has done. Power Plant Day and Bridge Day, all wrapped up in one. Was killing over 100 schoolgirls not enough for you, Trump? You've created the conditions of hell for civilians in that country by lying again and again about Iran having nuclear weapons, lying again and again about wanting to protect Iranian people from a fundamentalist regime that you don't agree with. And then you want to destroy Iranian infrastructure by cutting electricity and disrupting hospitals, collapsing transport, and ultimately placing civilians at the center of that violence. So what do you mean? What's up with... Is my camera okay? I'm not sure. That's super weird. Guys, what the hell is going on today? This never happens. I don't know what's going on. It's so fucking weird. Okay. Okay, I'll start from... I can't remember what I was saying. Um, anyway, he's talking about, Iranians living in hell, but he's already created those conditions anyway by deciding to venture into Iran in the first place, and going hand in hand with Israel to do that. But lest we forget that Easter is a holiday that's supposed to be centered around peace and forgiveness, but the only thing Trump is sacrificing is our sense of peace again and again. Also, we know that Trump hasn't suddenly converted to Islam either. I genuinely think that last part is really concerning. He's fully mocking Islam by taking a phrase associated with the culture and religion of the region that he's threatening and placing it at the end of a message about destruction. He is simultaneously mocking and asserting dominance, and he's showing that he can take the language of others and fold it into his own display of power. And if that doesn't scream imperialism, I don't know what does. But in doing so, he ensures that the message travels further, because people will react not just to the threat but to the way that it's being framed. So it's incredibly unhinged. Iran's parliament speaker Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf responded and said this: "Your reckless moves are dragging the United States into a living hell for every single family, and our whole region is going to burn because you insist on following Netanyahu's commands." He wrote, "Make no mistake, you won't gain anything through war crimes. The only real solution is respecting the rights of the Iranian people and ending this dangerous game." Former Iranian Foreign Minister Ali Akbar Velayati also warned that if the White House repeats its foolish mistakes, it will quickly realise that the flow of energy and global trade can be disrupted with a single signal. He further criticised Washington's strategy, stating that whilst the United States has learned history from Iran, it is yet to learn the geography of power. And I think that's the part that people need to actually sit with, because Iran is not going to read that and think, you know what, Trump, thanks for posting on Truth Social. Let's de-escalate. Let's have these conversations that you claim we're having, because that's just not how countries behave. That's not how states behave, and it's definitely not how states behave when they are being publicly threatened, humiliated, and mocked in front of a global audience. The irony of all of this is that this is what Trump said on the 23rd of March. He said that he was having very good and productive conversations with Iran. I don't think it's sounding very good and productive by the looks of things over here, Donald. And there was something that came out literally not that long ago about Trump, but he gave updates on the Iran war, and he was just reading from something that probably was written for him, essentially, I think doubling down on the things that he's done, but also extending that it's not going to be Tuesday, it's going to be Wednesday, 1 a.m. our time, I believe, GMT time. But anyway, Sean, what are your reactions to all of this? Our unhinged baby across the Atlantic who decides when he wants to go into countries and start killing people. But what are your thoughts to all of this?
I mean, my first thought is that he clearly does not know what's going on. I think it wasn't definitely not on my bingo card to be hearing him saying Alhamdulillah in one of his tweets. But there you go. Anything can happen with Trump. I think, look, as the only thing we can draw from the tweets and everything we've seen is that these justifications for the war has been very inconsistent and contradictory from US officials. The erratic messaging, all this lack of coherent strategy, the shift of deadlines, etc. I think what we can confirm, or the only rational conclusion, is that they have absolutely no idea, or they basically bit off more than they can chew. So the trajectory of this is going to be very interesting. I think it's going to be prolonged, and also I think they definitely did just definitely underestimate Iran, like the sheer geographical um, e- expansion it has over the region. I think people just need to even go to Google Maps and just see how massive it is as well, and just really even understand and internalize what they're actually dealing with over there. I think it backfired a lot as well because it exposed how the US have been some sort of puppet to Israel. Israel literally brought them into this war, and so there is the undercurrent of all of this, and the thing I'm sort of fearful about is this very terrifying lack of check and accountabilities, and check and balances on Trump. Like, where are Congress? Who is even like? And I don't believe in the Democrat Party, by the way, or the Democrats for the record. But who is going to be the figure that can take him on in the next election, and sort of even though I don't think that's going to be like the antidote to this kind of U.S. imperial hegemony, but actually, not be just to basically rival this very erratic individual in and for the presidency. And I think the great irony of it all, which I like to center a lot, is like, for a long time, this whole thing has been justified by the fact that Iran are supposedly like religious fanatics. Okay, people may even think that. Fine, I'm not even disputing that. Okay, but Marco Rubio and Pete Hegseth are literally also both deeply religious figures who are driving a war against a Muslim country, invoking words of religious justification. They're invoking Jesus Christ in all of this. So the hypocrisy in all of this is that actually, at the highest level, this is a theological war, and I genuinely believe people like Pete Hegseth believe in what he's doing and believe this is somehow like in the name of Christ. I think even on his like bicep is tattooed the Arabic word for that is called kafir, which is meant to it translates as disbeliever. So he proudly is an Islamophobe, and he's quite literally off the rails. And so this whole this whole last couple months of the Iran war, I think it is showing you that actually it's exposing the hypocrisy and the contradictions that lay at the top of this kind of US imperialist mission. And to be honest, on top of that, I think we need to also remember the Epstein files in all of this, and actually how that contextualizes how really messed up and sinister things are behind the scenes at the highest elite levels. So I think from moving forward though, we just have to monitor and see what happens. I'm kind of fearful for like this Tuesday announcement about, so literally tomorrow, what Trump said he's going to do. So we just have to wait and see.
Yeah, we have to wait and see because he said I just need to get it up. Sorry, bear with me. But he essentially was the public opinion is obviously very against him at the moment in America, and they're essentially saying like, "Hey, can you fucking stop? Because a gallon costs this much." And he said, if it were up to me, I'd take the oil. So I think that underpins his whole intention with, going hand in hand with Israel and going into Iran because they have bigger agendas. It's not, they don't care about civilian people. I don't think this is something that's like big news, but I think this underpins his whole intention that this is just how can I line my pockets even more by
Mm,
asserting the US imperialist agenda, and that's what he's doing at the moment. And I don't know what it's going to take for people to realize that if you've got, and you pointed to this really, really, really well, if you've got these people who are using Christianity essentially to justify the things that they are doing, is this not testament to the fact that they are deranged? Like they're criticizing what's happening in Iran and the quote unquote fundamentalist regime that's happening out there. But I think that the regime that we need to be most afraid of is the dis- deranged individual that's guiding the US in the way that
Yeah, I mean,
it's plummeting at the moment.
like the US regime, right, and what it's doing now is quite literally screwing the world. This is something that there's even a sort of fight amongst the elites in some weird way. The financial sector is almost like the only check and balance that can really hold Trump back,
Yeah.
because of the fact that a lot of these big corporations are losing a lot of money as well. And so we're living in a very sort of perverse, a very like illogical time. But the only sort of logic that really can rationalize any of this is to say that Trump is really a Machiavellian prince in many ways. And actually, like, he doesn't have any ideology, he only believes in himself, and the people around him facilitate that. And so this is a lesson that Europe and all the Western powers and everyone who's been cozied up to America in the last 20, 40 years or so, this is a lesson that they need to learn, that we shouldn't have hollowed out our own infrastructure, because now we're at the sort of mercy of the American empire.
Well said, and I think a really great segue into what everyone else has been saying in the comments. We're bringing our producer in. Hey.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, people guessed right. People were like, "Oh, it's late. Oh, Lewis must be producing." Thank.
There's no sound, Lewis. They can't hear you. No.
Lewis now on mute.
Are you on the scene?
One second. Curtis didn't. Wow. Gonna keep getting. Okay,
Guys, I feel like this only happens when me and Lewis are like together.
I think
This is
people can hear
not
me now.
ideal.
Can we get some confirmation in the comments, please?
You
I'll
guys
take a
can-
second to come through.
Yeah, guys, can you hear him?
Usually the comments take like extra few seconds to come through.
Yeah, they can hear you.
There we go. Okay, it's so funny because my intro was, "Oh, guys, sorry for all the tech issues." Ha 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 ha. Everything was working before just fine. But anyway, I don't want to waste any more time. Hi, everyone. People guessed right. Yes, Lewis is producing today. But I'll jump straight to super chat so we can just smash through this and make sure we get through them all. The World's End 66 donated £5 to assist TL a little bit towards the overall goal. Sean has been
Thank
great.
you.
Thanks, Sean.
Thanks so much.
We also had a bunch of memberships gifted. I always forget how to pronounce this properly.
Ollie.
Deus Ex. Deus
Ollie.
Ex. Deus, isn't it? It's Deus. That's it, yeah.
Ollie.
Gifted. I know it's Ollie, but I have to say the full name. Anyway,
Him.
Deus Ex Ollie donated membership, and Specs donated another 5 too. Thank you, Specs. Jim Speak, all the usuals, donated also 5. Thank you, Jim. Thank you for your patience, Jim. Len Len Bacane donated 10. Sorry, that's
Thanks, Len.
people who know will know. I'm just going to leave it there. Yori Gibson donated 5 turn left memberships. Thank you so much, Yori. Antifa Vegan Boy, this is the most woke chat that you can imagine, donated 10 turn left memberships, so thank you. And we will get on to the actual comments. So yeah, people were like, Lewis is producing in here. But onto when we were talking about religion, Deus Ex Ollie. Is Jesus telling us to paint roundabouts? I always bring up these types of arguments when it's like, you know, the ethno-nationalists and stuff. And it's kind of like, oh, we should have a white country. And it's kind of like, well, where does it say that in the Bible? And they obviously constantly invoke it. Have you guys been following the whole Easter King Christian message culture war fallout over the last few days?
What could
No.
people think Prince Charles is, or King Charles, sorry, is a Muslim? Is that what we're saying?
Yeah, basically, it kind of ties into this. So, the Queen in history gave one official Easter message, which is like it's a organized speech that's written. It'll tie back to history. It'll have maybe religious quotes. It'll tell a story, and it's like a big prepared thing. That happened once in history with the Queen, and that was in 2020. Exceptional times. Let's not even bring up the keywords. And then the King did one last year because the Archbishop of Canterbury was, AWOL because of the controversy of why he stepped down. So it's happened twice in history. And over the last week, people have been. What was it that Tommy said? He called him like a foreskin or something, or a bell end,
Oh dear.
because the King wasn't doing an Easter message, but they were doing a Ramadan one, guys. They were comparing a happy Ramadan on X
Come on.
to.
Muslims taking over. Let's go.
Big
But
up.
do you know where it got even funnier? Because with the online right, you've got the online right who are pro-Israel, and you've got the online right who are anti-Israel.
Mm.
And then when all the online right who are pro-Israel started posting, "Oh, the King put Happy Ramadan," all the online right who hate Israel and hate the pro-Israelis were saying, "Oh, why are the pro-Israel right-wingers not talking about how the King also said Happy Passover?" And then they all started fighting amongst each other. Just can't win, guys. The Easter message, guys, not British tradition. Just thought I'd let the British patriots know that. Actual said, which I think is a really cool comment to talk about. Personally, I don't give a shit about national pride. I care about the well-being of the population. And if you reverse that, do you guys think people would have more national pride just generally if we were just all way better off anyway?
I think if we had a better well-being of the population, we probably would have more of a sense of pride. But I think national pride comes when people's material conditions are better. I think if one's material conditions aren't that great, then you don't really feel pride in a country that you feel doesn't represent you, or you feel you're being ripped off by. I think it's one of those things that seamlessly falls into place when conditions get somewhat better. But then I understand why people don't resonate with it. Like, I think there's been plenty of people who have said that they feel uncomfortable, myself included, when they see Union Jack flags go up. Like, nationalism in this country has gone toward a trajectory of creating this us versus them narrative, except I'm not part of the us, I'm part of the them, because I don't fulfill the quote unquote what Britishness looks like. So I don't know. I think until that sort of sorts itself out and people's material conditions sort itself out, I don't think that we'll really see any improvement.
Yeah. Well, I guess what I think is that I think put it this way, like if I actually ask myself honestly, do I give a shit about national pride? I'll probably say no, but I do feel quite proud to be a Londoner, and I do feel quite proud of the community that I was born and raised in. And I think what that says is that actually I do have some sort of national pride that I actually do experience, but it's just very localized. And I think the deeper question here is not really about whether or not national pride should be a thing or people should attach to it, but actually, like, do people have a sort of meaningful sense of community anymore? Because for many of us, I think, like, not caring about national pride means we're quite secure in ourselves, we're secure in our own community, we have a sort of fraternity with one another, but there are many people across the country who don't, and so that leaves them a lot more vulnerable to these kind of charlatans to come along and say this is the solution to everything, this kind of like fake nostalgia around Christian identity and culture, etc., etc. So actually, like, I think even if you don't care about national pride, you should still care about national pride, not for yourself, but actually winning back the conversation to give people, again, that story, that identity, to tell themselves that actually they are part of a wider tradition, they are part of something greater than themselves. I think when you look at that throughout human history, that is something that has been so core to human identity. So I actually don't think that just because if our material conditions somehow get better, which, like, I'm quite pessimistic in thinking that they probably just won't, I think you're always going to need the storytelling function for people's personal identity. And so I think, yeah, I'd probably push back on, like, not caring so much or thinking that material conditions will solve everything, because there's much of our human experience is very immaterial.
don't know. I don't know whether storytelling. I don't know. Maybe you can push back on this. I don't know whether storytelling will be enough because we've had plenty of people tell their stories, and people in the face of those stories kind of go, like, that doesn't resonate. So is it like a case? Like, what do you mean by storytelling?
I think it's like so those particular people who care so much about national pride have basically probably been alienated the most because they come from cultures and traditions which have been immiserated in front of their own eyes. So they probably do come from like you know, like they think back to their grandparents' generation and how it was centered on the church or something, or the local community was actually a community. But nowadays the high street's very different and visually things are different. They're much poorer than they were. And so what it takes, so basically they're starting from a feeling of alienation, they're starting from a feeling of insecurity. So then these charlatans come along and sort of perfectly tap into that emotion and say, well, this is the reason why. What I'm saying is that actually no, we should be able to put forward, and I think it is possible to put forward, a story of national pride, which basically serves as the antidote to those insecurities and to those vulnerabilities, to the conditions that they find themselves in. So, and on top of that, I think that just like definitely the improvement of material well-being can help make it the case that you don't necessarily need to care about national pride in the same way. But I think there's still something fundamental about a human yearning for community, for seeing themselves as part of something bigger than themselves, etc. It's why, like, you know, Marxists are huge on like comradeship and sort of proletariat fraternity. It's why Muslims always find that they have the mosques to go to. It's why Sikhs always have the Gurdwara to go to, you know? I think there is a gap in British identity there. And the kind of more philosophical point is kind of a sort of self-destruction that was imposed on themselves, the collapse of kind of like liberalism. But I won't go into that because that's all getting quite complicated. But yeah, Charles Taylor, so the philosopher Charles Taylor talks about it a lot, so I feel like people should read his work.
Great answer.
Speaking of reading, I wanted to bring this comment up because I always like to remind people of this, if people don't know. So they think they're on a crusade. It's obviously referencing what you guys were talking about, America, Pete Hegseth. And obviously, Sean, you brought up Hegseth's tattoo. As Sean, Sarah, have you heard about Hegseth's book called The American Crusade?
I actually haven't, but I can probably infer what it's about.
Oh, you can, yeah, just from those two words. So, yeah, he wrote a book about 5 years ago called The American Crusade, where he was basically calling for the end of democracy in America, to essentially purge the left, Muslims from the country, that there would have to be a civil war and people would have to pick sides. And this is the only way that you're going to be able to get rid of it from the country. But then actually, towards parts of the book, he expands and talks about like Europe, and he actually mentions places like Luton, Bradford, Birmingham, Bingley, like just towns with like larger, you know, like more like Asian, really hyper focusing on Muslim populations around the UK. And he essentially, you know, when you're using the word crusade, and you're talking about ending democracy to, you know, get rid of this issue, it kind of goes back to like that cultural Marxism type of stuff that the Nazis pushed, right? The idea that Jewish people and leftists, communists have infiltrated our institutions, and it's like a manufacturing consent for almost exactly what Hitler did, right? The only way he could fix the country in his eyes was manufacturing the consent to go full-blown fascist and completely seize control of all the institutions so he can then, you know, purge them. Which is why, like, they essentially, what do people call them? Like, they call them like the Taliban Christians now. Some of them, like, I've heard these kind of like terms kind of being flown around, but it is basically the same thing, isn't it? Like, in terms of like, they are trying to use like other versions of like Islam in, let's just say, or how people think Islam should be within like Afghanistan, and have the Taliban rule, invoking it, but while invoking their own extremism. They're basically, you know, at the same level as what they're describing. It doesn't obviously make any sense. But I think if Pete Hegseth could, I think he would go full-blown fascist if he had the power to do it.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think, you know, the there's something that the Muslim community need to do as well, right? So I give, so for people who don't know, to give them extra context, I'm a big sort of like Muslim voice in the kind of political community and stuff. And I've given a lot of talks about how our generation, the onus is on us to actually put forward a sort of positive vision of Islam and suggest how actually it's not some sort of alien thing to British culture. Because when our sort of parents' generations came over, they were economic migrants. They were just trying to get their bread. You know what I'm saying? Send money back home, make a life that's better for themselves. And I think now what we're seeing is that Muslims have become the alien other, like you're saying, Lewis, like, and that follows the same history of the Red Scare, the pogroms in Eastern Europe against Jewish people, like the same language is being used, and even, you know, the Windrush generation against the black community, Caribbean community, like history is repeating itself in that sense. And so I think, you know what? It's sometimes it sounds a bit wishy-washy, but I've seen it on like the sort of local level at least. Like actually showing people grace and mercy and compassion and humanity can actually change people's minds a lot. I remember I did a video at the Bibby Stockholm, if people remember that, and there was like some big sort of protest outside the Bibby Stockholm and far right. It was like, not really far right, but basically anti-Muslim protests somehow outside the Bibby Stockholm. And I did a video with these ladies and I spoke to them for 20 minutes. And after the 20 minutes was up, I told them, oh, by the way, I'm Muslim. And they were like, oh, they were saying very Islamophobic things to me. But then because of like they found that sort of gentle nature that I was having a conversation with them with, they actually said to me, oh, maybe like actually some of the stuff, like I take your point, and actually I don't actually think Muslims are all that bad. I actually they started backtracking. And I think like that sort of level of humanity is something that definitely needs to be recentered. It's very difficult though, because now we have the internet and most people's experiences of Muslims or any other communities is just from online, and that is basically just not any sort of realistic version of reality. So I think from the perspective of the onus on us is to really just like from our communities, that I think that's basically the big push. I think people are very self-aware about the need to do that. I think just even on the question of how do you actually face a fascist, because I agree Pete Hegseth is a fascist. I'm a bit at a loss for words. I don't really know. All I remember is that to say like really and truly, I think we forget about the kind of like fundamental human condition and how like actually when push comes to shove, like people get violent. And so I just think back to like the Walthamstow, or like when they said like, you know, they were going to march down Walthamstow, the far right, in like 2024, and how like people actually came to the streets and said, no, you're not going to do that. I know Muslim brothers as well were patrolling the streets saying, actually, if people want to scrap, we're going to scrap. I feel like we need to also be comfortable with the fact that, you know, sometimes there's something very raw and human about facing people who are very, like, far gone. Not to say I'm inciting violence against them, but I'm just saying that we have to be prepared that, like, these are the consequences of, like, some of that rhetoric and language. And people are dying in the Middle East because of it every day.
There's so many parallels as well to the 1930s in the UK, right?
Yeah.
The communists and Jewish people and the leftists and the
Of
unionists were
course.
out in the streets fighting the fascists, right?
Yeah.
We were there on the ground, literally fighting them head on. And then if you actually look at the history, you had like liberals and conservatives basically arguing about whether Oswald Mosley should be allowed to go speak at a university. It's almost it's quite parallel to where we're at now with a lot of these free speech conversations.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is that because Trump's now becoming so unpopular, this is what happened to Oswald Mosley in the British Fascist Union. Because other areas of Europe got fascism before, as obviously you've got Italy, you had Franco in Spain, and obviously you had Hitler, is that a lot of people actually, fascism didn't gain as much ground in the 30s in the UK because the leaders at the time were able to say, look what's happening over there, look what's happening over there. And it does kind of seem a little bit now, with Farage's popularity and Reform's popularity dipping a little bit, it does seem to be heading in that same direction. So yeah, I just thought that was really interesting.
Yeah. Let's,
By the way, I quickly got up a quote from that Pete Hegseth book. I know people who've watched this before have heard me say it because I just think it's so important to emphasize like how much of a dangerous man he is. So this is a quote from his book. So in his book, The American Crusade, he said that leftists have surrounded traditional American patriots on all sides and are ready to close in for the kill, killing our founders, killing our flag, and killing capitalism. He says that an American crusade needs to happen. The hour is late for America. Beyond political success, her fate relies on exercising the leftist spectre dominating education, religion, and culture, a 360-degree holy war on the righteous cause for human freedom. And you guys will love this next line. A horrific scenario that nobody wants but would be difficult to avoid. He's talking about civil war. He says that the end of the United States Armed Forces, which elsewhere he calls the only powerful pro-freedom, pro-Christian, pro-Israel army in the world. And basically, if we don't, he says Islamists will get nuclear weapons and seek to wipe America and Israel off the map. This is the guy who's now running a $1.2 to $1.5 trillion military machine. Like, that's genocidal rhetoric.
But it reminds me a lot about Stephen Yaxley-Lenin's book Manifesto, and he had the same sort of rhetoric. Like they're all the same. They're just dressed up really fucking differently. But he said something along the lines of like that the political class have openly planned to replace the indigenous people of Europe, and in his book Manifesto, he wanted to focus on how they're doing that in the UK and what they can do to kind of stop that from happening. And essentially, Hegseth is doing the same exact thing, is echoing the Great Replacement theory, that the organising principle of white supremacists is, you know, you don't have to explicitly say that white people are being replaced or that white people are better. You can simply just imply it by saying that we have this invasion that's coming in that's trying to topple the system that we've got already. And I think when you're looking to get racism and xenophobia off the sofa and generate that bigotry with some observable output, you'd have to create the sense that there's an active threat. Hegseth does that quite successfully, and then I think so did Stephen Yaxley-Lenin to some point, although I don't know where he is. I think probably on another holiday. But and I think that's when you kind of bring in those grand conspiracies that we have to always point to the conspiracy that it's Muslims and the racialization of Muslims, like where Muslims kind of like seek to overrun. And I found it so interesting that Farage used this same quote, this same like rhetoric that Stephen Yaxley-Lenin does often about the Judeo-Christian order in the UK, and I think Hegseth is kind of doing the exact same thing by essentially like that Muslims or people who don't agree with what we're doing are coming to arrive and breed quickly and basically try to take over. So yeah, that is Great Replacement theory rhetoric, I think.
No, definitely. I think a good book recommendation to understand how vapid and vacuous Judeo-Christian morality is as a term is from Peter Oben's The Fate of Abraham, How the West Misunderstands Islam. And actually what you will see and what he explicates really early on is that actually the Judeo-Christian as a term only really came into fruition after the 1930s. Before that, people didn't really Christians didn't really consider themselves as sort of like allies, quote unquote, with Jewish people. In fact, for most of human history, they were the ones persecuting Jewish people. Jewish people sought of refuge in like the Ottoman Empire and things like that. So it's very bizarre. But now, obviously, ingrained into people's consciousness is this kind of othering of the unwanted cousin of the Abrahamic faiths, which is Muslims. And so I think, though, what we are seeing is that the collusion with Israel to actually also propagate this for so many years is undoing itself. Look, these history shows again that, yeah, maybe history might repeat itself, but part of history repeating itself is like these tyrants don't last forever. They will topple and they will fall. So I think we just need to have that sort of hope that even if it feels quite uncertain right now, like these things can happen. And I think part of like what Turn Left does, what North Star tries to do, even the other left-wing media organizations, is try to face this hegemonic narrative with a counter narrative that actually things are very different. So I feel like, yeah, within all of our capacities, we need to just try to think what kind of talents do we have to help contribute to that counter hegemony as well.
Right. I just want to say thank you to Len Bacane for donating £2. And we've had some really amazing feedback today. We did have one comment saying that Sean looks like Jesus. And you know what?
I saw more than one, I'll tell you that much.
Don't tell the online right wingers. They love
No,
their white depictions of Jesus.
no, but how mad is it when I might go on a little right wing podcast soon. How mad is it is gonna be just me, proud Muslim, looking like their prophet, just talking the talk. That's what you know what I mean. That's what I'm gonna be doing. So
I'm excited. Look, keep us updated on that. You've just dropped that in there very subtly, but
yeah, well, yeah, we'll
back
see.
that in a bit.
Yeah.
Right, I'm gonna head off and leave it back to you two. Thank you much.
Thanks
Thank you
so
so much,
much,
everyone.
Lewis.
We will make sure that
Yes.
Sarah's microphone is perfect for next
Oh,
show.
I always have sound issues. Thanks so much, Lewis. Really great comments. I did find this one, which I thought was quite nice. Sarah and Sean both have such nice, calming voices. They should consider doing audio books and stuff.
That's
And
what I
there's
always
something
get
really
told.
Yeah, it's quite nice. So it's quite a nice comment to end on. But honestly, Sean, what an absolute honour it's been to have you. Your analysis has just been so top tier, and
No,
yeah, I feel like I've learned a lot, and I think a lot of people in our audiences probably have been nodding away at everything you've been saying. So
no,
thank
I want to come back on, man. I think it's a cool little. I just got FOMO. Like I've always been outside of the community, but now I want to be part of it. So
No,
cool.
you are the community. You are it, and I think we need. I think we always say that we want a nice left wing ecosystem, and I think this is
Nice.
just testament to how wonderful the spaces are that we intentionally create. I say we as in like everyone on the left. So yeah, thanks so much, Sean. He will definitely be back. I know that for a fact. But thank you so much, guys. Honestly, you guys have been amazing as per bloody usual. I'm always so grateful to have my Monday slot back because it just feels very normal. It feels like a great start to the week. But do remember to visit turnleftmedia.co.uk/support, where you can sign up and you can donate 99p. I haven't done it. I haven't put it in the script, guys. Do you guys know? Do you guys know what it is? What it is that you need to do? I hope that you do at this point because it's really important that you do. Because I don't. There it is. There it is. You can help us grow by visiting turnleftmedia.co.uk/support to help fund our work or becoming a YouTube member for just 99p. But we're on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Thanks so much, guys. I'll see you guys Friday.